Oh,
All right. Welcome to the Catalyst Way, where we have conversations around unleashing the power of purpose and meaning to feel transformative change in yourself and for others. Welcome to episode number 20. That we've done 20, amazing in itself. And today, we're gonna take one of our purpose and meaning questions, and we're just gonna have a discussion around one of the questions because I thought it would be an interesting one to talk about. So the question we're going to share is, if you were to mentor your younger self, what advice would you give regarding finding meaning and purpose in your life? So that's the question that we're going to tackle today. So I'm throwing it your way
okay.
first. So if you were to mentor your younger self, what advice would you give regarding finding purpose and meaning in your life?
It's such a good question and also loaded question because when we think about our lives and someone may ask us, well, if you could go back, what would you have done differently? Or we have conversations around, are there things that you regret? And what do you think about how you lived your past? But what we don't often hear is this question: how would you mentor? Right? Because that's a very different question when you look at it that way. And for me, just thinking about the mentoring part, it would be not just there are certain things that I listen to that I probably shouldn't have. There was advice that I got that was probably well intentioned at the time, but really didn't serve me as well as it could have. There were some concepts and attitudes that I fell into because I thought it was what I was supposed to do at the time and tried to just go with the flow and make those around me happy. So I think one of the first things that I would say with mentoring a younger me would be to just, you need to get clear on your personal values. And I know that's something that we talk about often, but it would pretty much be the launching pad for me. Just you need to be clear on what you believe in, what you stand for, what is important to you, not what everyone around you thinks should be important for you because it's also important for them. And I think that would have definitely cut the time in half, so to speak, as opposed to where I am now. A lot of that work would have already been done, and things would probably be a little more different than they are right now. And I say that, but we also know that that's hindsight, right? Because maybe when certain things happened, I may not have been ready or process them then the way that I do now. But I do think that aspect of getting your personal values in order would have been very important for me. And also knowing and understanding that you need to be okay with doing some things that may not be the popular vote, but it follows your heart and it follows a greater cause. So stick with it and see it through because we are so shaped by our environment and society and family, all of those things that go on around us that are close to us, that it takes us away from really understanding and knowing how far reaching all of those things will show up in the rest of your life. Right? There are things that without you taking the time to uncover them and deal with them, show up years later. They don't go anywhere. It became a part of you, your childhood years, and it's still there. And you think you've dealt with it. And then something happens and it triggers you, and then you find out that really hasn't gone away. I haven't dealt with that aspect of me. So I do think that mentoring is the key word, right? Because it's that training, it's that teaching, it's that constant, let's go over this until this changes, until an improvement happens here. And again, I don't think we spend enough time with that. It's just almost a quick discussion about what would you do if you could change something in your past, and it's a one-off or the occasional occurrence that took place, rather than it being, let's address that entire period. And if you could go back and mentor a younger you, what would you say? And it's certainly not an easy question to answer. You do have to sit with it for a while. And for that reason, it's not something that everyone would welcome, right? So, I think many of us don't even like being mentored now, let alone dealing with mentoring your younger self. But yeah, that's what I think I would do.
And as you're talking, there is an activity that came to mind to help answer this question. It was lollipop moments. So if you think about that, so my younger self, and we talked about, like, in college, you go to college for a specific thing. Well, I went to college for sports, but not to play sports, to be involved in sports in some capacity. Um, but I never got a chance to connect the dots on what the thing about sports mattered to me. So when I think about mentoring my younger self, especially when it came to sports, it wasn't sports per se, it was helping guide people through doing things. So I've been a guide all my life, but I've never had a word to describe it. So, whether I'm guiding people at a sporting event or taking people on trips, bike trips, and I was the kind of the guide that say, let's go do this, and let's do this. And let's go on this 100-mile bike ride just because we're going to do it for fun. Um, or like I play Dungeons and Dragons and being the dungeon master, guiding people on an adventure. The guide thing has always been a through line, but I never knew what that was until I got learned later that this is how to live your life as a guide. So it's interesting, when you think about, you know, talking about your mentoring your younger self. Um, I wish I had what we have now as tools and resources back then, but no one
Right.
was doing this work back then. And, I'm always of the belief, you give it to someone, they might not get it at that moment, but at some point they might reflect back and say, oh, I remember taking, that class with that person that gave me these tools to help me figure stuff out. And now I get it. You might not get it when you're 17, 18, 19, or even 22, 23, 24, but maybe at 40 you might get it. So it's interesting when you talk about, mentoring your younger self around purpose and meaning. Um, but I don't even think you and I were really clear about purpose and meaning, probably 10 years ago.
I think that it's like you said about knowing that you were a guide, just not necessarily having the clarity in what particular area it was supposed to be, but there were bits and pieces of the gift that were already showing up, right? I think where we don't get a chance to be a part of that at a younger age is because we are part of a system, right? It's not part of purpose and meaning. It's an educational system that's just designed to get me through the system, right? That's all I need you to do. I just need to graduate you and move you on to a job or move you on to higher learning if that's what you choose to do. But the focus is not on purpose and meaning, which is what makes that conversation a very different one. So yes, you had the elements of being the guide in place, but without having someone, yes, to really guide you through the purpose and meaning aspect of it, you really don't get yourself to a place where Oh, but this is why I'm here to be a guide. I get it now. This makes sense. Now I know why I possess these traits, right? And I don't know that without this type of work, without us doing what we do and sharing this, and anyone else out there who is doing anything along these lines, it's the only way that you can provide impact for everyone who's in a system to now understand that you're here for a purpose greater than that. Because otherwise, you wouldn't realize that. I did 2 years in architectural technology, right? Because my dad's a subcontractor. And again, that was the road it was going down, right? Because this is what my dad did. So I'm doing this to maybe see if I can provide assistance and help in this area. And this would be good because I've been out on the job site with my dad anyway. Why not do this? Until I realize I absolutely hate it. I want nothing to do with this. I really don't. Right? It was what my dad loved to do. I enjoyed helping him, but turning it into a lifelong mission, absolutely not for me. And how many individuals do we have who are living that same story, right? And again, because we're not having conversations about purpose and meaning, how do you even get to the place where, yes, if I could go back and mentor a younger me, this is what I would do. And because I now know that, how can I then provide impact to someone else and get them to the place where let's have this conversation sooner? But it does mean that I have to get to where I'm willing to mentor me where I am right now. If I didn't get the chance to do it with a younger me, could I do it right now?
And so, and it was architectural. What was it? Architectural.
Architectural technology.
So,
Yep.
so did that pay well?
It paid very well, but it was going to be a venture for me and my dad more so than anything else.
Right. So, and I asked that because, when I went to school, my mom was in management, the sciences. My dad was an accountant. And, they wanted me to pick something that was focused on making money. So money, back in the 70s and 80s was the driving force for picking a major for me or in my life. They wanted me to pick something where they knew I could be secure and safe and have money and be able to have a better life than they had. Um, so of course I go to college and I'm like, I major in phys ed, and they're like, what? And then I changed to Parks and Recreation, and they're like, what do you do with that? So of course when I told them, well, it's a major where you get to pay, you paid to play. And they're like, what? But it's interesting because I think for me, it was getting through. My whole goal was to get through college. It wasn't to go out and get a job and make a lot of money. It was just, let me get through college and then let's see what happens after that and pick a major that just, that is somewhat interesting. Because I had a hard time finding anything that I was interested in. Because, with PET, when I was a PE teaching major, you had to go teach physical education. And it's really hard to teach physical education if you don't like kids. So I'm like, what are your other options? And then they came up with Parks and Rec, but I didn't want to do anything where you had to read a lot. And I didn't want to do anything in the sciences. And I was good with numbers. So I could have done stats, but I was good with sports numbers, not like statistics the way it's taught, like with, business and all that. So, but they didn't have a sports stats major. So what do? You just kind of find something that you can tolerate and then see what happens. And even, and I got my bachelor's and it's like, so what are you going to do with a bachelor's degree in Parks and Rec? Well, I was a personal trainer and did that for a summer and then a part of the fall, an internship for spring, then summer. And I'm like, well, I don't mind helping people, but not in this way. There's got to be, but I was offered a master, to go for my master's, and it's like, well, I could put this off for another 2 more years. So I put it off for another 2 more years. Still didn't know what I want to do. Got offered a chance to do a doctorate, and then did that for a year. And then it's like, you know what? I'm tired of school. There's got to be something more. So I, did a volunteer experience in an advising center and haven't looked back. Um, but I wish I had almost like a guide, like a mentor, to say, well, if this is what you like, maybe you could look in some other directions. But I didn't have an academic advisor who could help me with that. They were only focused on, well, what are you going to do in Parks and Rec? And I'm like, but I don't want to do anything in Parks and Rec. But they couldn't help me with anything else, and there was no one on campus that could help me with that. So it was always, you're always floundering until, you find that one person that just kind of you can connect with. We were talking about the, I matter because, so I always wonder if you could find that one person that believes in you and will help you on your journey to guide you. I think that's invaluable. And, I don't know if you had that when you were younger, but I know I didn't have that when I was younger. But I ended up becoming that for people. So it kind of evolved over time where I became the guide because I started getting really good at what I was doing. So I don't know. Did you have a similar kind of thing?
Very similar. And I think what you're describing is usually what ends up happening, right? You end up doing what you're doing because the people that you help and the people that I help are the people that we used to be, right? And
Right.
now I'm in this place doing this because you know what? You didn't have that, and I didn't have that, and I'm going to make sure now that you get it. So you take that, and that's what it turns into, because like you just said, it's that floundering. And I'm looking at that thinking, all right, how do I make sure you don't flounder around as much as I did? Because you don't need to do that. And this is not okay. Let's stop this, right? And that's the mentoring aspect, right? That's really important. It's not just a case of what are you good at? What would you like to do? Because we've got those questions being thrown out now, and we have individuals who still don't know what to do with that. Not just those who are in school, but also those who are out. We've got 40 and 50-year-olds who are still struggling with that question. Like, what are you good at? What would you like to do? That's the least of their worries, right? And it's really mentoring and helping them, guide them down that path. And it's, to me, it's spirituality on a deeper level, right? It's more than surface. It goes beyond just hanging out at church on a Sunday morning, because we got way too many people doing that, and they still haven't figured out the purpose and meaning part. So we know there's more to it than just your regular attendance, right? We already know that. Just like we know there's more to it than you just going through school for 4 years. You're going to do that. Now you've got a degree. Now what?
Mhm.
And oftentimes the now what is you're back at home in your parents' basement, struggling to figure out where you're going to get a job. And you've got mom and dad who have no idea what to do, because for them, it's, I'm just trying to help you land employment somewhere so you can get out. Right. And it's those type of situations that drive us, and is why we do the work that we do, because we want to stop the floundering, because you don't have to flounder. There is a way for you to know why you're here and what you're here to do. And if we can help you get to that point, now can you in turn do it for someone else? And let's get that trickle down effect to take place, because the way you were mentored, will you now go and mentor someone else?
So, so now that you know what you know, would you do anything different?
Now that I know what I know,
Right. Would you do anything different?
I would almost have to answer that with a no, only because of the way those situations helped shaped me into being who I am today.
Yep, that was going to be my answer. So
So that's
that's
that's the only reason why I would have to say no,
right.
because it's all of all of those circumstances, every single one of those situations, the good, the bad, the ugly, the times when I got it right, the times when I completely screwed it up, the times when I did things the right way, when I completely blew it, just when it was not my fault, when it was 100% my fault, no matter what. All of it shaped me into being the person that I am today.
Mhm.
And I'm grateful because of that. Because when it took place, even if I did not learn at that exact moment, and there were times when, yes, I got the lesson right away. There were times when I didn't get the lesson right away. But then later on, it was light bulb moment. Got it. I understand now. But those things helped me, and I think give me a clearer sense of how to deal with others who are in that same place.
Yeah. So you answered the question because I was going to answer it the same way. Everything, if you connect the dots, everything led me to here.
Yes.
So, the positives and the negatives, the positive relationships, the negative relationships, all of it had to happen for me to be in the place that I'm in right now, just like you said. And so to me, if you think about your journey, everything happens for a reason, good and bad, to bring you to where you're at, and you get to change that. So, all right, anything else you want to add before, because your video just went out. Are you still there? Well, I think we've done enough here, so we're going to call it a day. And so thank you all for joining us, and we'll catch you next time. Have a great day.